Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and welcome back to another review. A few people actually asked, since I reviewed the first Crocodile Dundee, thank you for the reviews, to review Crocodile Dundee II. And I might just talk about the third one at the end of this video, but they wanted my thoughts on Crocodile Dundee II. So I thought, why not? I asked, you said okay, and why not? Now, Crocodile Dundee II, which once again, DVD has no features on it. Once again, it was a gigantic hit. It came out about 2 years after the first film. The first film was 86. This came out in 88. And it actually came out May 25th, 1988, which weirdly enough is my birthday, is May 25th. So it came out the exact date of my birthday in 88. And you have a lot of the cast coming back. You have Paul Hogan, of course, Crocodile, Mick Dundee. You have Linda Kozlowski. I think they were married by this time, as of course his woman Sue. You have John Meelan, who unfortunately died shortly after the film's release, which is too bad. But he's the guy who's Walt, friend of Mick Dundee. You also have appearances by Charles S. Dutton, Stephen Root, who this guy's been in quite a few films. He's probably most famous for Office Space. He's the guy with the glasses who's like, stole my red stapler, you know, that guy. But he's been in quite a few other films. He was in Jersey Girl. He was in, if you look up Stephen Root, I think Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He's been in quite a few films. But I think this was his very first film. And the bad guys actors are Hector Uberi as Rico, and Juan Fernandez as Miguel. Juan Fernandez is kind of the second lieutenant of the bad guy. And that guy, Juan Fernandez, he's been in quite a few. I think he is the same guy. Yeah, he's the same guy who plays the Collector in The Collector. Yeah, I don't think he was in the sequel, but the first film, The Collector, he is the bad guy, the Collector in The Collector. And I'm like, holy shit. I mean, obviously you wouldn't know it because he's always wearing a mask, but yeah, that's the guy who's the second lieutenant. Like, you have the bad guy, then you have the bad guy that's right below. The guy right below, he was also in A Man Apart, In Hell, Executive Decision, in a short scene, Ace's Iron Eagle 3. Oh, he had a role at the beginning of Arachnophobia. I remember that. He was one of the team that went in, and the American who was with them got bit by the poisonous spider, and it crawled into his sort of coffin. But that was one of the guys who was with him. I remember him in Arachnophobia. Now that I see that, Juan Fernandez, aka Juan Fernandez de Alarcon. And the main bad guy, I'm not sure what else he's been in. Directed by John Cornell. This is a guy who helped Paul Hogan on his TV show in Australia, the Paul Hogan Show. I believe he helped write the first film, and he also wrote this film. I'm looking. No, he didn't write this film. He helped write the first film, and he produced the first film. He produced this film, but it was written by Paul Hogan and Brett Hogan. And John Cornell just was one of the producers, and he directed it. So the guy who produced and helped write the first film produced and directed this film. And again, this film was still a big hit. This film, in the summer of '88, made over $100 million in the U.S. and it made over $200 million worldwide. I mean, you have no idea. That's a huge amount, especially in 1988 dollars. I mean, it only cost $14 million to make, and it made not only $100 million in the U.S., but over $230 million worldwide. It was the 6th highest grossing film of the year in the U.S. in its first 6 days, it made more money than Rambo 3. And granted, I mean, I could say I like Rambo 3 more than Crocodile Dundee 2. I think Rambo 3 is underrated. But yeah, that's how big Crocodile Dundee was, folks. Crocodile Dundee 2 beat out Rambo 3. They both opened around the same time. And again, I'm, of course, Rambo Raff for life. And I do enjoy Rambo 3. I did a review of all the Rambo films, including Rambo 3. And I talked about why I love Rambo 3 and feel it's underrated. But that's how big Crocodile Dundee 2 was. It made a lot more money than Rambo 3. And I enjoy the film. I don't like the film as much as the first film. But I like the film. It tries to be its own thing. Like, the first film is more of a romantic, comedy, fish out of water story, while this film is more of a adventure story. I mean, I say action. I mean, there's action, but I don't want to say there's action because when I think of action, I think of fisticuffs, explosions, firefights. It's not that type of stuff. So that's why I kind of think of this as more of an adventure movie. And yeah, the second film is PG. It's rated PG. So, well, the first film was PG-13. So the second film was rated PG. So that's what I mean. It's sort of adventures. As Crocodile Dundee in this film doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't use guns. He doesn't. I don't remember him using a gun. Maybe a teeny bit, but not like your typical action hero type of thing. Which makes sense for this character. And long story short is they go up against this Colombian drug cartel. Which again was different from the first film. Like the first film was, it was just, he's visited by this reporter. He shows her around his place. Then she takes him back to New York, fish out of water, then they fall in love. So it was different that the sequel, all of a sudden, it's this adventure with a drug cartel. And I'm guessing that's why probably critics didn't like it. Critics kind of took a shit on it. But I still enjoy the film. It wasn't redoing the first film. It wasn't copying the first film. It was trying to be its own movie. But I think I like the first film. I think just because I like the love story aspect in that film, and I don't know, I remember maybe it's just that was the one I was introduced to as well as the first film. But I have friends who have introduced this film first, and it's still a good film. I mean, it's some time after the first film. I mean, it opens up with Mick Dundee. Him and Linda Kozlowski are still happily in New York, and he's actually fishing in the New York harbor, throwing bombs, blowing up to get fish, and like helicopters and police come on a boat, and then they find out it's Mick Dundee. It's like, oh, Mick. So sort of established that Mick knows at least the head cop guy, and they know who he is, and this guy is pretty much an innocent guy. And he's trying to find a job, and he talks to this guy played by Charlton. And this is a guy who names himself Leroy Brown, and people think that he's, a bad guy. People think that he's doing stuff that are illegal, but it's all an act for Charles. It's done. He's, tossed to Mick Dundee. He's like, yeah, keep it low down. I deliver stationery, and he actually does deliver stationery. Pens, pencils, things like that. But he's like, with a name like Leroy Brown, yeah, make people think you look bad, like the song, Leroy Brown, baddest man in the whole world town. They don't sing that song, but that's what he's referencing. And you still have that little bit of fish out of water, little bit, because Charles S. Dunn goes, like, Mick Dundee's looking for a job, and Charles S. Dunn says, hey, you help deliver stationery for me? You dig? And he's like, Mick Dundee's like, you did, yeah. Is that part of the job? Digging. I can't do it justice, but Paul Hogan gives yet again another great performance. He's just very likable. He's very earnest. He's very not mean, not angry, not evil. Just pure heart. You tell this character just a pure heart to him, and Very likable guy. Very likable guy. And like let's say there's these kids that he knows that he's teaching them about tracking, which is kind of like what he does in the third film with his kid, like teaches him a little bit of stuff. So it kind of reminds me, you know, they kind of repeat that a little bit in the third film. And you have callbacks to the first film, like one of the kids says, "Oh, that's a guarana, you know, you can eat it, but it tastes like shit, like right, Mick?" That was a reference to a line in the first film. Later on, when someone says, "Oh, take that out," Mick Dundee takes out his knife, and the guy says, "Now that's a knife." That makes Mick drop it. That's a reference, of course, to the famous scene in the first film. And this film is kind of reverse of the first film, because the first film started out in Australia and it ended in New York. And this film starts out in New York and it ends in Australia. So kind of interesting when I realized they kind of did that flip. And again, it's more of an adventure film than action adventure than a comedy. I mean, there's still little bits of humor, but it's more of a action adventure film. And again, when I say action, I'm not saying it's the most high-tech action, but you know, for this kind of film, it did what it needed. And the way the bad guys come in, Linda Kozlowski, she had this ex-husband, and the ex-husband, I believe the character's name was Bob. Yeah, Bob. And the actor I recognize, this is a guy who is always overseas doing the story. I recognize this guy. I want to see if this is the right guy. Dennis Boutsikaris. Might have said his last name wrong. I believe this is the same guy that was in... Yeah, Batteries Not Included. I remember him from Batteries Not Included. He was also in the Dream Team. But I do remember him from Batteries Not Included. That's the one I remember him the most. He's in this for a teeny bit. Sees the drug cartels kill someone. He talks to the DEA agents. He's like, "Get me out of there." Then he's going to send the photos that he took to his ex-wife in New York for safekeeping. And of course the bad guys know where he is, and you don't see it, but you hear that the guy gets shot, and you hear a body fall to the ground, so you get the idea that the ex-husband, Bob, is killed. And purpose the drug cartels, because they were listening in, they know that, okay, they gotta go after Linda Kozlowski, grab her, they want the photos back. Mick Dundee gets home. Oh, of course, before he does, this is around the time we have a fun scene where he's, again, helping Charles Dunn with his stationery. And he... Hey, there's someone walking out on the window. And he finds out that it's a suicide attempt. So he decides to walk outside on the ledge. And I want to see if I get... The guy says, "I'm about to throw myself off this building." And Dundee goes, "You could kill yourself. That's the whole idea." "Oh, alright, I'll just wait till you're finished." And he waits. And he's like, "Would you mind getting a move on? I'm on my lunch break." And the guy's like, "Do you have to watch me?" And Mick Dundee says, "Oh, okay," and turns around, puts his back to him. Then he goes, "Oh, by the way, well, why are you doing this?" And the guy's talking about how, have you ever loved someone and then they broke your heart? And then the guy goes, "I love that bitch. He was wonderful." And then Mick Dundee's like, "He?" And then he slips on the ledge. And then the guy's looking and he's like, "Screw that." Just runs off. So Mick Dundee has to pull himself out of there. And then that's around the time when he gets home and finds out what's going on. And then a whole bunch of stuff happens. He's being followed, and he corners one of the DEA agents. He doesn't know it is a DEA agent at first, and that's Stephen Root. The guy's actually at a urinal, and Mick Dundee grabs him at the urinal and says, "No, don't zip up." Puts a knife to him, then puts a knife down below so you could tell where the knife is at, and pretty much gets him to talk. At one point, there's a guy who tries to kill Mick Dundee, and Mick Dundee like punches right through the fucking door. And then like rigs him up so that if he cuts the rope, the guy will fall. he gets the info and the DEA agents come, so he grabs a rope and he jumps off the ledge down to the floor below and slams right into the window. He's like, "Sorry, mates," like, you know, apologizes and runs off. Then you have a moment, might have been before or after, where, yeah, I'm not 100% sure because this is a film that I didn't watch over and over and over again like the first film. I still really enjoy the film though, but the first film, like, I watched countless times when I was a kid. But Crocodile Dundee 2 is still solid because, again, these two worked very well together. The fact it's a different type of thing, it didn't feel like a rehash, it didn't feel like a redo, a remake, it didn't feel like they were just pulling off the same thing over and over again. They didn't try to do the love story again. Because these two were together, of course they could give both of them back. They didn't try to do another fish out of water, or, hey, let's bring another character and he's now a fish out of water. It was, you know, still doing with these characters and, you know, bring the adventure aspect, like this subway scene where, again, the guy says, "Oh, take out what you got back there," and, "Oh, that's a knife," and makes Mick drop it. And you actually have these tourists, and Mick Dundee's able to get away in his gunfire, and Mick Dundee's actually able to put this trash can, this Asian tourist, like one of these two Asian tourists gets the guy and knocks him out, and the other Asian tourist is like, "Give me 5. You see who that was? Whoa, Clint Eastwood." No, Clint Eastwood's tall. Yes, he's very tall. And I had fun with that little bit of scene. He has to figure out what to do, so he gets in touch with Charles Dundee, and then he gets in touch with these guys. And these guys are like, "Well, why should we help you?" And then I like this little bit of conversation where Mick Dundee goes, "Well, what did you do last night?" "We didn't do nothing. We were here all night." "Oh, that's what you call cool, is it?" "Well, tomorrow, if someone asks you the same question, you say, 'We didn't do nothing.' Or you can say, went out to Long Island to help this lunatic storm a fortress. At the very least, you can come watch me get my head blown off." And I like that this asshole is like, "Well, what are your chances of getting out here with that jacket?" And Mick Dundee effortlessly just throws that big ass knife right in between the guy's mohawk. And he's like, "Better than average." I thought it was pretty fun. And yeah, a lot of these sort of punks or whatever go off and pretty much make a lot of noise, so Mick Dundee can sneak into this place and, you know, knocks out some bad guys. You know, knocks on the door, so the main bad guy goes in and pretty much shoves this big ass statue right through the door, knocking the guy out. Rescues the girl. Some DEA agents sort of say, "Oh yeah, we'll protect you." Then they instantly get shot at their apartment. And that's like the first half of the film. And so in the second half of the film, he pretty much goes, "You know, I can't protect her here, but I know where I can go so I can see them coming." And that's back home in Australia. And that's where you get the characters from the first film. You get the big guy named Donk. You get the other guy, his friend Walt, John Millen, which is too bad that the guy passed away shortly after this film. You got another guy, Nugget, played by Gary Skilton. And then pretty much the bad guys come there with a few others. Like they have, what was the guy's name? I know like one of them is Luis Guzman, is actually one of the henchmen of the bad guys that go to Australia. I'm trying to see what the other guy was, his name. Yeah, I think one of the other guys is Jim Holt. I could be wrong. Let's see. I thought it was one of the guys that would later play a different character in the third film, which could as well been, but I can't remember what it is. I can't remember. But anyway, it doesn't matter. They get a couple guys there, and they go off and pretty much go after Dundee and his woman. And Dundee pretty much knocks them out one by one because he knows the area, he knows the land. They have this one guy, but he leaves once they find out that they're chasing Mick Dundee, so they kidnap the Walt character. And Dundee makes them believe that he was ready to kill Walt so that they, so that they don't kill him, and they sort of lead them where Mick Dundee wants them to go. He'll sneak in through the night, drop like a snake in front of one of them. He'll grab one of them, then replace it with like a creature. He gets some help from some Aborigine friends, and you have some fun stuff where the guy talks in Aborigine, and the other guy goes, "No, mate, we just hold them." And then Kozlowski is like, "What did he say?" He wants to know if we're allowed to eat these men. And then the men like Louise Dumas and them are freaking out. Like one even passes out. And Linda Kozlowski like looks concerned, and then the guy sort of winks at her. And that's why I like they play off, the Aborigines are not just terrible, typical bad guys and scavengers, and no, it's like they're just normal people, and they're just fucking with these people. Fucking with them, making them scared, just fucking with them. I like that. Acting like normal people. And pretty much Dundee picks them off one by one, and when I say picks them off, it's not, again, not violent. Again, it's PG. Doesn't kill them. Just knocks them out, and even get to a point where one guy is looking, and see, the character Nugget, who's one of Dundee's friends, goes, I've been looking for Walter Riley. I haven't seen him around, have you? And the bad guy, actually, that's the guy who I was thinking of. Let me see. Alec Wilson. Yeah, Alec Wilson is the guy I was talking about, where he's in this film as one of the bad guys in Australia. And then he's in the third film, Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, as another guy who's like a friend of Dundee. Alec Wilson, so that was kind of strange. But anyway, the Alec Wilson's character says, "You should have brought a gun instead of a beer, mate." And Nugget goes, "Nah, I don't need one. I got a dunk." And the guy's like, "You got a what?" So that big guy comes out and goes, "Dunk!" Knocks the guy out. So it was nice to see these guys from the first film again. And pretty much, it's down to only the two bad guys, and they decide to start a fire. Dundee grabs one. The main bad guy holds a knife to his neck and goes, "Take off your pants." And that's because, of course, you find out he switched clothes. Linda Kozlowski and the Walt character, they don't know that, so they think they hit the bad guy, and then they think Mick Dundee gets shot. But then the Juan Fernandez, he gets shot. They think Mick Dundee falls off a cliff. And like the Aborigine comes out, one of them, and what's the line he says? Tell Mick if he wants his clothes back, you can climb down there and get him his bloody self. It's a good thing you're a bad shot, Walt. And then, of course, you find out Mick Dundee's alright. He just got grazed. And he's like, "Do you want to go home?" And she goes, "I am home." And again, really great to hear Peter Best come back to do the score, because he did the score in the first film. It was great to see him hear him do the score in this film. That's a problem I have with the third film, is that the score is very generic, and it's sad because the guy who did the score was Basil Polidorus, who did the score for the third film. Basil Polidorus, RoboCop, I believe Conan the Barbarian, right? And again, the score for Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles is so generic. It's wow, and that's Basil Polidorus. I just realized that now. Holy shit! I wish they had gotten. I don't know if Peter Best is still with us. I wish they had gotten him, because the score in the first two films are very well done, and they fit the film very well, and it helps a lot. And a sweet ending. The two of them together. These two together, sort of facing kind of this way towards camera, freeze frame, it kind of makes you smile, like, okay, this was a good time. And, I mean, it's not wall-to-wall action. If you think of action scenes, it's not fisticuffs and gunfights and all that. But it works for the character. It works for Because if he was doing that, it would have been out of place. Like, it works for this character. It works when you see the first film, you see this. It's not out of place, which I think was the right decision. It's a decision I understand. And again, the film works because I think they did the film 2 years after the first film. That was the right timing to do it. So they still had some, some fresh creative juices in there. And, it looks like a film that would have been in theaters. It obviously made a shitload of money, so some people like it. If they came back, because, I think tickets in 1988 were cheap compared to today. So if a film makes over 100 million, people are going back again and again. So if people are going back again and again, just from reviewing the first film, there are people I know who enjoy the sequel too. So I don't understand why neither of these films, of course, like someone said, Paramount are pricks. They rarely give features, but I'm like, they gave it for Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They gave it for, Top Gun. They gave it for Star Trek 4. That was all in the top 10, along with Crocodile Dundee. But, no, not Crocodile Dundee 1 or 2, which made more money than, well, maybe not Top Gun, but made more money than other films. And the sequel was a big success. I'm surprised they did not have a third film by 1990. I'm surprised that by 1990, maybe that's when Paul Hogan was doing other films like Almost an Angel, then he did Lightning Jack, and those films didn't do anything. Then he was in Flipper, and that didn't do anything. And then he sort of did like 1 or 2 other little things and kind of disappeared. But, yeah, if you're... Crocodile Dundee II is a solid sequel. Again, I don't like it as much as the first film, because the first film I just grew up with more. I grew up with the film more, and just sort of the simplicity of the fish out of water, and I thought, there were a little bit more bits of humor that I chuckled at, as opposed to the second film. And, the love story was sweet to watch. But the second film... Still, I like the idea that they didn't rehash it, they didn't redo it. You do have some fun scenes in there, some of the stuff I mentioned. You get to see more of what Mick Dundee's capable of. At least a little bit physical-wise. These two still had really great chemistry together, which makes sense because they were married. Peter Best coming back to do the score. He did another great job with the score. Capably directed. I don't really have anything wrong with the directing. Nice to see some people in the supporting role like Charles Dutton. And, cool to see Stephen Root. And might have been his first film role. Bad Guys did fine. Nothing wrong I can say about the bad guys. Overall, Crocodile Dundee 2 is just a worthy sequel. And real quick, like Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, it's one of those films I can watch as a time waster. I can watch the film, but it's definitely my least favorite of the three. Because 88 was the second film, and then this new film didn't come out till... They didn't make it till 2001. So, 13 years later... It was a pretty long gap. And it was at a point, I think, this film bombed because no one cared about Crocodile Dundee. It's not like anyone talks about Crocodile Dundee today, let alone back in 2001. And the thing with the film, I think it went into theaters, but it seems like a straight-to-DVD movie. And for straight-to-DVD movies go, I've seen a lot worse. Ace Ventura Jr. and some of the Mask went into theaters, but that's much worse. Beverly Hills Cop 3, I think, is worse. RoboCop 3 is worse. I know those were in theaters, but Alien 3 is worse. Fucks up aliens. Jaws 4 is worse. Again, Kickboxer 2 is worse because they kill off the star of Kickboxer 1 and his brother. So it makes Kickboxer 1 pointless. This is just a lot worse. I thought at the end of the day, Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles was harmless. But at the same time, it does feel like a straight-to-DVD movie. It was directed by Simon Windsor. Which that name sounds so familiar, Simon Windsor. Why does that name sound so familiar? And he's still married with Linda Kozlowski. They're in Australia. They have a kid now. You have like little cameo roles with like Mike Tyson and George Hamilton, and you have Paul Rodriguez in a tiny role. Jonathan Banks, who was in 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. He's one of the bad guys here. The other bad guy, I believe it's... Is it... Let's see. Is it this guy? I think it is. I want to make sure, see what other films he's been in. Shit, I don't know. It might be this guy. I forget what the... I mean, the villain is weak. I mean, that's one thing I can say. The main guy who's the villain, he's pretty weak. He's pretty forgettable villain. And, like, the whole plan is dealing with... They're pretty much art thieves. Like, these paintings that were supposed to be gone for a long time. And they're smuggling in, but pretend to be a film studio making these films. Like, even though they flop, they keep making another one. But what they're doing is they're smuggling in these paintings and, you know, killing anyone who finds out. And it's a PG film. Simon Windsor, I recognize him because he directed Daryl, Quigley Down Under, which I enjoy, Harley Davidson, The Marlboro Man, Free Willy, Lightning Jack, so that's how he knew Paul Hogan, Operation Dumbo Drop, The Phantom, and after this he directed a lot of westerns like Monty Walsh, Into the West, Comanche Moon. But yeah, a lot of those I've heard of. Lonesome Dove, the miniseries from '89. So he's directed quite a few films that people heard of, like Free Willy and I like Quigley Down Under. I don't mind Harley Davidson, The Marlboro Man. That's one I can watch. It's a time waster. I can watch it. But yeah, this film I think it's a harmless time waster, but it's definitely... The first film was a romantic comedy. The second film was more of an adventure film, action film. This one is just more of a straight-up comedy. And yeah, I think it's harmless. I mean, it's a PG film. Their kid wasn't too annoying. Paul Rodriguez, for the small bit he's there, he's fine. And yeah, it's just one of those... Like I said, when the second film came out, it was only 2 years later, so some of the creative juices were flowing still. Here, it's a little bit less. Did you need a third film? No, but at the same time, I'm not pissed with this film. I'm not mad that the film exists. I mean, Paul Hogan, his character Mick Dundee, is still living in Australia, trying to get this. Pretty much what he does now, he wrestles crocodiles for entertainment of tourists. Yeah, this other guy who's his rival named Jackal. That's Alec Wilson, the guy who's a bad guy in the first film, in the second film. And he's on his boat, and the crocodile gets his boat. And then the other guy gets his boat, so they're both in a tree. And some of the a lot of the jokes don't really work that well. Like, an Aborigine goes, "Oh yeah, I heard about what happened. We have ways that no white man could understand," and then he answers a cell phone. Kind of like jokes that are just kind of easy jokes that you could make, or I don't know, it just wasn't too funny. But at the same time, it didn't piss me off. I think part of the reason is it was nice to see Paul Hogan again. It was nice to see Linda Kozlowski again. It was nice to see these two again. And again, it wasn't anything done that pissed me off, and I did get some chuckles. Like when they were in a Paramount tour, and then an anaconda, which I swear looks exactly like the anaconda in Anaconda, with a film I like. Dundee doesn't know that, so he takes his big ass knife and slams through its head, which sparkles and shocks it. The Mike Tyson cameo is this scene where he's with his son in the park, and they see this guy, and this guy, of course, he's Mike Tyson, but they don't know who that is. And the guy, Mike Tyson's talking about how he's meditating, and so they meditate with him. And then after, of course, the joke is Mick Dundee says, "Yeah, he's pretty big, but man, he's really nice. Probably wouldn't hurt a fly." I mean, that's the joke. Again, it's not really that funny. But I don't know, it just doesn't piss me off. It just wasn't. It was harmless. It was just nice to see Paul Hogan again. I think he still did a fine job as Mick Dundee. It's just the script. Matthew Barry and Eric Abrams. So, Paul Hogan didn't even write the script. I think there's something online that says he helped rewrite the script, but he didn't get credit for it. But I didn't. The writing isn't really that great compared to the first two. That's why I think the creative juices wasn't as flowing as much. So you get some jokes that just sort of fall flat. And the score by Pedro Voladores is really lame score. I'm dumbfounded that he did it. It's a very generic. That's what the film just seems like a straight-to-DVD film. Even the ending where Mick Dundee's running around the studio, some bad guys chasing him, and someone climbs a ladder, and Mick Dundee pushes the ladder off so the guy falls down, or he does the thing with the lion, who's one of the animals that's being used for the film, gets the bad guys in this cage along with him, and they knock the bad guys out pretty easily. Again, it's pretty easily. It's like no threat, no suspense or anything that anything's going to happen. And you have some jokes like he's trying to teach Jacko because he's come over now. Mick Dundee thinks he knows of course, knows the area, knows the city life more than him, so they go to Wendy's. But then when he orders, he says, "Good evening, Wendy." So, it's the jokes like that kind of, I don't know if you want to call them obvious jokes, or the jokes that just kind of fall flat. But I don't know, just seeing these characters again, seeing these two again, seeing Paul Hogan again play the role. And the film, it didn't piss me off. It was harmless enough. I don't think the film is that long either. 94 minutes long. It's the shortest of the three. Paul Rodriguez, he's one of the extras working on the film, and then Paul Hogan, because his woman, the reason they moved to Los Angeles because his woman gets a job at the newspaper in LA division, so he goes there with her and the kid. And she has a story, and then he just says, "Hey, he's pretty much bored," and he goes in to undercover, but as an extra. Little bits he has with Paul Rodriguez are fine. And then he becomes an animal trainer because he helps them with this monkey in this scene. That's what even hearing me talking about it, just sounds like a straight-to-DVD movie. Like a film that, why did this get in the theaters? But it did. I don't know, I just had harmless time waster of it. Like, if I watch the first two, I have no problem watching the third film. That's the best way I could describe Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Crocodile Dundee 2 and 3. Either way, thanks for watching, take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.